What's up, everybody? Happy New Year. Welcome to the Canes Insight Daily Podcast, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. New year, portal is cooking. Got the Branch brother from USC on campus. We'll talk about that. Some other Miami players jumping in the portal. Of course, defensive coordinator search is on. A lot of things happening. Quarterback, a lot of action here for the Miami Hurricanes. We will break it all down for you live. Some folks that you don't have to worry where they're going. They are always staying put. That's Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Pete, hop in.
How you doing, D?
Doing great, man. Glad to be back in the studio. Was up in Hawthorne, Florida, God's country, bass fishing, got bald eagles flying overhead. A little too close to Gainesville for comfort, but just awesome Florida living. Swimming in the springs, just getting away for a little bit, but I mean, we're still recording the whole time, so the portal doesn't go too far. It's always on.
Yeah, big, and I'm paying attention, just always trying to stay on top of everything. But big news this morning with the Branch brothers, as we see there on campus.
Yep. No, it's a development that I'd heard might happen here during the break, actually right before the bowl. I got the message that they were expected to visit the second, but when Nakos and these guys weren't reporting it, I'm like, our wires getting crossed, because these kind of things do happen where, some school expects a player and then the agents are moving them somewhere else. But they did both make it. They are here right now. It is a beautiful day in Miami, Florida. And I think the fit for both of these guys potentially makes sense. Of course, they went to Bishop Gorman, which is becoming quickly a Miami Pipeline. S.J. Alfatuli this year, number one center in the country. Elijah Lofton last year, maybe Miami's best young offensive player from Bishop Gorman as well, played with these guys. So there's a lot of links between Miami and Bishop Gorman. You have Zion Branch, the safety. Both these guys are actually highly recruited players. Zachariah, the receiver, being the more highly touted player. But just breaking them down, Zachariah Branch, 5'10", entering his junior year this year coming up. 5'10", 175, 10.3, 300 meters, 21.01, 200 meters, 24.0 long jump, 46 and 4 1/4 triple jump, which was the best jump in Nevada. And as a freshman, he was an All-America, first team All-America as a freshman, as a punt returner, had 2 touchdowns. Shifted more to a receiver role this year, still returned punts, but had 47 catches, 503 yards, and a touchdown. Looked more to me dynamic as a freshman than as a sophomore. I don't know if he was battling injuries or what. I know he had some ankle stuff. Brother Zion, another highly touted player out of high school, 6'2", 210, safety. Been battling injuries for the last couple of years. Had 15 tackles, 3 passes deflected, and a sack in 2024. These are guys that are star kind of players already, despite the production not screaming star. They signed with Jordan Brand out of high school. Their great uncle is Cliff Branch, Oakland Raiders legend. They've been involved in a lot of nonprofit charity stuff. They're just big name type of players. You see it on social media at the reaction to everything they're doing in social media. So is the hype going to match the production? Hopefully that happens in the Miami uniform.
And of course, a couple comments already coming in about, these guys aren't going to come here. At least Zachariah is not going to come here if there's no quarterback.
Yeah, that is certainly going to be the question mark, right? I've been saying from the beginning, I expect a transfer portal quarterback. The key is just seeing who jumps in, right? Because most of the bowls now have been played, or the bowls have been played. So now you're talking about playoff games. So that window keeps extending, but at some point, the portal is going to be closed, and Miami's going to need a starting quarterback here. So
and I guess one of the other schools that's been heavily rumored has been Georgia. I guess you don't really know who their quarterback is going to be next year either.
I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty too. I mean, Arizona State, I think Lev is likely to stay there. But he's really more of a running quarterback. I mean, he's a very good quarterback as far as winning ball games, but it's not like he's necessarily a pass first type of quarterback if you're a receiver. But I do see Arizona State as a potential fit for these guys. Obviously, they're not from very far away. But Georgia has the same uncertainty as Miami. They're playing today. We'll see what Gunnar Stockton can do. Carson Beck's declared for the draft. I thought Carson Beck would have made a lot of sense for Miami, but that, at least for now, doesn't seem to be on the table. Where's Jalen Milroe go for the Hurricanes? I mean, he's not a name I've heard connected to Miami, and that's, this is not a name I've heard behind the scenes connected to Miami. But if I'm looking at it, me personally, I think it makes a lot of sense. This guy is one of the most dynamic dual threat quarterbacks in the country. Obviously, he's a passer. He's up and down, but this is college football. This guy finished 6th in the Heisman last year. I think he put it behind a very powerful offensive line. Miami probably had, I would say, top 5 running game this year on top of being the best passing game. You bring back 4 offensive linemen. You bring back some big, talented running backs. You put this guy behind that line with his ability to not just run for power, but also run with speed and make explosive plays running the football. I think he makes a lot of sense here, but I've not heard him linked to Miami in any respect. Could that change fast? I don't know.
Yeah, Ian Coleman's asking if we would take Milroe. I would. I know it didn't look pretty at the end of the season there, but there's a lot to work with there.
I take him in a heartbeat. And by the way, he should come here. You're right. To me, it's a match that makes sense both sides, but it's not something I've heard a lot of buzz around either from Miami or from other sources. So maybe there are reasons why this hasn't come together. Maybe he's going to go pro. I don't know if he should go pro coming off a game like he had against Michigan and just a season where he had 16 touchdowns passing, 11 INTs, not his best production. To me, it makes sense to go to a school like Miami and rehab. But again, not something I've heard about, but it's
a lot of the stuff they're saying about him in Bama now is kind of what I heard about Jalen Hurts.
Exactly.
So
exactly. And the biggest, they're not the exact same type of players. I think Hurts a little quicker. I think Milroe faster.
Jalen, I think he can bust off long runs more than Hurts. Hurts would wear you down more so.
Yeah, Hurts more like a 4.6 and quick laterally, and can hurt you in the pocket just with those quick movements. Milroe, I think, is more straight line, but once he gets going, he's legit 4.4. He can run, take it to the house, like you said, Pete. So, but as a passer, there are the same concerns. And now, Jalen Hurts, one of the best passers best quarterbacks in the world, also linked to Miami at one point, but made the smart decision at that time to go to Oklahoma. I think with Milroe, the thing I like about him, and I think Miami should be prioritizing when you talk about quarterbacks to bring in, great background, great character. That's the kind of guy you need to bring into this program. Another name who I have not heard linked to Miami, but could make sense, Mark Gronowski from South Dakota State. We have a development there with Washington State's quarterback staying put. So South Dakota State's coach, Jimmy Rogers.
Jimmy Rogers. Johnny Daniels. That's a new one.
We record group chat sports before this, which, by the way, we do a college football show talking about all the portal moves and the coaching moves and everything else before this show, sometimes after the show. And we recorded today. I have too many names in my head. I got to write them down because I'm bad enough with names to begin with. When I have like 100 in my head from one day, it can get a little confusing. But Jimmy Daniels, the South Dakota State coach, moved on to Washington State. A lot of speculation he would take Gronowski with him. Of course, Mark Gronowski, the quarterback at South Dakota State when they won 2 national championships at the FCS level. He also won the FCS Heisman, the Walter Payton Award. Anyways, coach moves on to Washington State. And the quarterback, Eckhouse, who really looked good in the bowl game, the Holiday Bowl, entered the portal but decided to come back. So now Washington State is not looking like they're going to bring in Gronowski, the South Dakota State quarterback. He has an NFL option as well. He's a draftable player, according to multiple NFL people we've talked to. But if he wants to go D1, a school like Miami makes a lot of sense for him. To me, he's an interesting option just because of the 40 wins, the experience. He's a physically talented player. Of course, his NFL grades. I could see that fit for Miami. I see potential options here, but Miami's working very quietly in the portal when it comes to quarterback. But
I think in general, in terms of everything, like before the news hit, the Branch brothers were on campus today, right? It didn't leak out anywhere before that.
Nope, not at all. It was Miami was named initially as a potential school, but as far as when the visits were being put together, nothing. So Miami is working very quietly. I think what we all agree on, and again, if you listen to this show, we've been saying it for months, is that Miami, to me, desperately needs a portal quarterback, and they cannot just run it back.
D, while most are concerned about the quarterback spot, Bagging Up is worried about the run game. He said, we will never get away from power inside zone, A-gap, spam running game. We have to diversify the run scheme. Okay,
a couple of things on the running game. All right. So I'm going to...
I knew this would get you riled up.
Because I'm old enough to remember when we used to come on this show, Pete. And by the way, Bagging Up, we love you. You're always on. You're always commenting, always bring good stuff. But Pete, we used to come on the show, what, a month and a half ago? And literally every show for like 2 weeks was, what's wrong with the running game? What's wrong with Damian Martinez? He should be benched. Get Jordan Lyles starting. Martinez is slow. And now Martinez, 1,000+ yards, 6+ yards a carry, 10 touchdowns, declared for the draft. And everybody's like, how are we going to replace this guy? He's a monster. So, I think the running game has been evaluated by large portions of our fan base for a lot of this year. So here's some facts on the running game, right? So you look at yards per. Remember, Miami had the number one passing game in the country. You can say Syracuse, but really Miami, when you look at the efficiency per pass, was by far the best passing game in the country. Cam Ward, the best passer, best quarterback in the country. All right, and we were a very pass happy team because of that. When you look at yards per carry, right, as far as Division I, Notre Dame number one. You can understand that because, this is for Power 4. Notre Dame number one. You can understand Riley Leonard, running quarterback, Jeremiah Love, probably best running back returning in the country for next year, and a great offensive line and a run mentality. Number 3, Kansas State, same situation, running quarterback, good running back, and they're in the Big 12. Competition was less. Number 3, Miami, 5.6 yards per carry. So Miami had one of the most efficient running games in the country. They were completely dominant in the red zone and on the goal line. And one thing Miami did more than anybody in the country was avoid negative runs. People ask, why are our splits so tight? Well, there's 2 reasons. There's a few reasons, but there's 2 big ones. Number 1, when your splits are that tight, you're not giving up as many free rushers up the middle because you're closer together. The gaps are smaller, right? Number 2, you're not giving up a lot of tackles for loss in the run game. And because of that, and you guys just look at the eye tests. How many tackles for loss do you remember Miami having? How many 2nd and 11s, 2nd and 12s when they ran off first down? It just didn't happen. So Miami was able to consistently get 4 or 5 yards on first down or whenever they chose to run. And maybe their run, because the gaps were so small, it precluded some of the huge 50, 60, 70-yard runs, but it also avoided the negative plays. And as a result, Miami had Cam Ward in a favorable down and distance all year. What happened? We were the best third down team in America by a mile because you had Cam Ward and you had good down and distance. So our running game was elite this year. When you look at the numbers, look at the eye test, look at the game we just saw running for 300 against Iowa State, it was elite. And when you look at the at college football right now, right, we'll see what happens here in Notre Dame and Georgia, both teams who are running teams. Let's say Notre Dame wins because that'd be my pick to win as we sit here today. Could be wrong. Let's say Notre Dame wins. They had the best running game in the country. Georgia wins. They're going to have to run the ball because their quarterback's injured. The 2 top running backs in the country, Ashton Jeanty, Scadaboo, both in the tournament. Penn State, Ohio State, the best running back tandems in the country, both in the Final Four. What this playoff has shown me, and let me know in the comments if I'm off here. Running game is absolutely critical. The ability to run the ball with physicality, with size, with dominance, with pushing guys out of the way. That's what separates the men from the boys, and that's what still wins in college football. It's always won in college football. Alabama and Georgia won with this for the last 2 decades. Now we're seeing other teams do it as well. That's what wins. Miami needs to keep that. You bring back 4 offensive linemen. You bring back Fletcher. You bring back Lyle. That's a good start. But a guy like Gronowski who runs the ball with physicality, a guy like Milroe who runs the ball with physicality, I like both those fits because, yes, we want to keep passing the ball. We had the best passing game in the country this year. It was a lot of fun. But you better be able to run the ball in 2025 when it comes to playoff football, the type of championships that Michigan won last year, and that somebody's going to win this year.
Bagging Up says it's sleepy and ball control, just like our passing game. I would like to be more explosive. I think everyone wants to get more explosive. I think that's more on the skill positions than the scheme, though.
5.6 yards per carry.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, just for so you guys understand this.
But none of these guys in general, because he's saying that it's sleepy like our passing game. In the passing game too, like there wasn't a true speedster.
Wait, passing game was sleepy?
Well, that's what he says. So,
God.
Besides Sam Brown was a speedster. We didn't get enough
sleepy.
out of him.
We had the best passing game in the country. We had the best offense in the country.
This is bagging up words.
They were both explosive, beyond
Look,
explosive.
This is the comment. You can read it again.
Bagging up, my friend. We were the most explosive passing game in the country in terms of yards per pass. So yards. I mean, again, I hate to do this to you guys because I'm just hitting.
This
you
is
with
why we
stats.
love the fans, though. Joshua Eugene says he thinks we should have ran the ball more to control the clock.
We averaged 5.6 yards per carry. That was the most yards per carry of any team in Power 4, aside from Notre Dame and Kansas State, both of whom had running quarterbacks. In terms of yards per pass attempt, we were number 2 in D2 in Power 4 behind Mississippi, 9.2 yards per pass. And we passed a lot. So, I mean, how much more? And then overall yards per play, which is the ultimate measure of efficiency, we were number 1 by 0.5 over number 2. So that's a big margin between number 1 and number 2 being Ohio State. So I don't know what to say. I want to repeat that. I don't want to get away from that. I want to repeat that. That's the hard part, is figuring out how to repeat that, particularly in the passing game.
Question here asking who we would prefer if it was up to us, if Miami had a choice between Milroe or Gronowski. I would say Milroe. I think the upside's higher there, and the speed of the game, there's not going to be any sort of difference there.
Yeah, I agree. I would say Milroe, but I like both. I mean, not both, but I like either. I think either would be good fits. To me, when you look at college football, when you look at pro football, meaning young quarterbacks going to pros, get the draft, right? Said it again. I said it on the show before. I'm sorry for repeating myself. Experience is the name of the game. Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix are tearing up the pros because they had more college snaps than just about anybody ever at quarterback. Cam Ward had an incredible amount of snaps in college before he even got to Miami. Shedeur Sanders, same thing, ton of snaps. Dylan Gabriel, I know he had a tough game yesterday, but a ton of snaps. Will Howard had multiple years of starting experience. So you want to win in college football. You want experience at quarterback. And I think Gronowski with 40-plus wins, I mean, that's a huge number, man. This guy's played a lot of winning football. I don't care if it's FCS. I don't care what it is. There was a scoreboard. There were a lot of people in the crowd, and there were grown-ups playing, and he did a hell of a job. And then Milroe, SEC, he started. He's played in the playoffs. He's had big games. He is somebody who has a lot of experience. So to me, an experienced quarterback for the Miami Hurricanes makes a ton of sense.
Guys, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We have almost 1,200 on live with us. Kenty says Branch, Trader, Daniels, Carr, nice receiver. We'd also have a returner in Branch. Now, that's to me a huge part of this. And by the way, hopefully he's never a trader. It's JoJo Trader, man. Yeah. We don't want him to be a trader. That wouldn't be a good thing.
The autocorrect hit up my man Kenty here. So yeah, Trader, and he's looking really, really good in practice. And then of course you saw a flash of that in the bowl game. I think as with the offseason to get his body right, which was the big question coming into the season. He is banged up a little bit because he's just the high school to college. He's not Jeremiah Smith that came in with the body ready. I think he needed that year to just grow, and a full offseason to get his body right, I think will help him tremendously. And then his route running. He has all the tools to be an elite route runner with his quickness, with his ability to change speeds, his fluidity. I think just more time to work on his craft there. He's going to be deadly running routes. You saw open he got, particularly on that first down catch, not even the touchdown. He was like open by about 10 yards because he's going to be a really, really sharp route runner. By the way, shout out to all the truckers listening to the show. Pete and I were meeting some listeners of the show out there in Orlando, and realized that, man, truckers got a lot of love for Canes Inside Podcast. A lot of time on the road. They need to pass the time. We appreciate all you guys and all you do for this country, keeping things running, and glad that we could be a small part in getting you through these long drives. So again, appreciate all the truckers listening to the show. Shout out to you guys.
Comment here from Williams Bacon asking about Noah Thomas. He said, are we really interested? I heard you mention us on group chat. And before that, I think was that a NACOS report, D, that mentioned Miami?
Yes. So,
I was going to say is before the show started, I said to you, man, that would be a nice get for Miami if they could throw themselves in the mix.
Yeah, no, 100%. 6'6", 205 pounds. He was mossing people in the bowl game. I was surprised to see us in that mix, quite frankly, because I know we have CJ Daniels, who's a bigger receiver himself, but also another veteran presence. But that was the first name mentioned by On3 when Noah Thomas entered the portal. They said Miami, Georgia was mentioned as well, and what other schools in there for Noah Rogers? Texas, right? So heavy hitters. But Miami was mentioned first in this report by Pete Nakos and Steve Wilfong. So they clearly want to add another big-time receiver to this room. I think, JoJo Trader and Elijah Lofton will be centerpieces of this offense going forward. Of course, Daniels is in there for a reason. Nikar got some snaps and was open a couple times. Could have made some big plays if he had his number called. But Miami's continuing to add. You lose a lot of production with Jacoby George and Xavier Restrepo coming out the door, Isaiah Horton. So plenty of targets to go around to replace Noah Thomas. Got to watch as a big receiver down the field.
Ian Coleman says, D-Money, we need a tight end.
Well, Michael Bowman visiting
Alex,
today. Alex Bowman. Man, what I do without you. Bowman, tight end from Tulane. Big red zone presence, 7 touchdowns this year. Number 2 tight end in the portal is visiting today. At least he was scheduled to visit today. I don't think that's changed, but let's assume he's visiting today. 7 touchdowns last year. 13 for his career. Red zone threat. Not necessarily a dominant blocker, but a guy that can play in line, not just a pure flex guy, has some size to him, and very interesting option at tight end. I think you bring him in, he now basically replaces what Riley Williams was supposed to give you. He's your starting in-line tight end. Elijah Lofton, more of your jack of all trades. I personally would like to see us bring in 2 tight ends. One is more of like a McCormick replacement. One is more of like a Riley Williams replacement. And then let Lofton be used everywhere, because I really think his best use is in the backfield, both as a fullback and even as a tailback, because he can run the ball. You saw a little bit of that on that fake punt. Lofton can run the ball. He was really, really good running the ball in spring when you had a lot of when you had, Martinez wasn't here yet, Lyle wasn't here yet, Fletcher was injured. Lofton was our best running back in spring by far, and he looked really, really good. Didn't see that this year because he didn't need to, but I think Lofton in the backfield is very, very effective. He's also a very good fullback. You saw some of that this year. And then from both of those positions, he becomes a mismatch, because if you line him up wide, whether he's lined up with the receiver whether he's lined up with a linebacker or a safety, he's still a mismatch with his ability to run routes and catch the ball. So he's going to be a centerpiece of the offense, man. And I think getting more tight ends with tight end bodies helps free him up to just be that weapon.
Kane's Cats He305 says that Mark Bowman's brother. No, I think this kid's name is pronounced Bauman.
Okay,
Alex Bauman. I think it's different spelling. So the Tulane tight end is from New Jersey. So no, they're not different last names and from different states.
Yeah, Alex Bauman. From Red Bank Catholic in Red Bank, New Jersey. But this is a productive player, man. This guy's number 2 tight end in the portal. His brother played tight end at Notre Dame. Basketball player as well, athletic kid. Would be a good get. You could reel him in. I think the guys you're looking at they're on visits that Miami's going to push to get commitments from Bauman, and also James Brockermeyer, the center from TCU, who is visiting today. Miami would love to plug him in, put him at center, let him compete with Ryan Rodriguez. S.J. Alfatula is going to be on campus pretty soon, coming from Bishop Gorman. I believe he's in town for the Under Armour anyways, practicing up there in Central Florida. He'll be playing today at 4 p.m. Tape that game if you're watching the Georgia Notre Dame games. You can see some really, really talented future Canes, including some 26 kids that are playing in that game. Jordan Campbell, linebacker commit. So you'd love to see Miami add those 2 on offense and continue to look for explosive players.
The comment here from Eldridge Primus, and I think this was a sentiment from a lot of people, but I just wanted to talk through the comment real quick. I hope Kevin Beard uses more wide receivers this year, at least 6 deep. Couple things. One, these games where a lot of them were tight at the end. You were having to come back in a lot of them, and understandably, you want who you think are the best guys out there, right? Now, if you want to nitpick and say there should have been certain guys playing over other ones, sure, you can do that. But we've heard in the past there's too much rotation at receiver as well. So it's such a tough balance. I really can't fault anything from that room this year in terms of the production. Yeah, there were some drops in certain situations, but I really can't fault much from that room.
Yeah, so you had 4 receivers that had NFL aspirations, right? I think 3 of them will probably get there. Sam Brown will get a shot just because he's so athletic. So it's hard those guys are veterans with those kind of aspirations. It's hard to not play them. Plus you have Elijah Arroyo, what a stud Elijah Arroyo is, man. Not only playing the way he did, but then playing till the last snap of that Pop-Tarts Bowl, man, just really with an injury history. So he really laid on the line for this team. Love Elijah Arroyo. He's a hard guy to not put on the field on top of your other tight ends that were really good. Probably one of the best tight end rooms in the country. I talked to somebody who his team played against Miami, and he said that was the best tight end room they'd seen. So it's gonna be a different team next year. We'll see how the dust settles. And I think if you're much better receiver than tight end, you play more receivers. If you're much better at tight end, you still play a lot of tight ends. Just kind of got to see how it all shakes out.
So trying to get to some more.
Well, we lost my voice here. But
Wow.
sorry. We had a big departure here from the portal. I'll say big departure because he hasn't played yet, but certainly a scholarship departure from the portal. And Isaiah Thomas, a kid I know you interviewed, Pete, when he was still in high school, coming out of Clearwater, Florida, originally from Canada, Toronto, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Canadian kid came to Florida.
Yeah, Toronto. He has it in his bio.
Was a really good player as a sophomore, like dynamic, looked like a future 4-star type player. Got injured, came back, got injured, I believe, it was beginning of his junior year, came back, and then got injured as a senior. Miami honored the scholarship, which, props to Miami for doing so, but that put him behind. And I think he probably saw that the writing was on the wall if he wasn't able to play in this safety room, which is being overhauled along with the whole defensive backfield. And he had ultimately entered the portal. Really big, physical, athletic kid. Story with him, of course, it's just those 2 knee surgeries. See if he was able to recover. Hopefully he does, because he does have a lot of talent. And the size is still there. It's just going to be about that knee injury healing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with Guidry was one of the guys who brought him in, so I would imagine that was part of the decision.
Yeah, and look, Miami is going to continue to overhaul its secondary. You've seen, not talking about corner and safety. Charles Brantley from Michigan State, veteran corner, very productive corner in the Big Ten, really good player there. Has battled injuries, but's been a really, really good player at the college level. He comes in, he's plug and play. Will he be outside nickel? We'll figure that one out. Emmanuel Carnley, super long, 6'3", athletic corner from Arizona. His pro football focus grades are pretty poor, but then you look at him as a 4-star transfer, number 6 overall cornerback transfer, and people who played against him said that coaches that played against him and talked to 247 said that he was better than Tacario Davis, the other corner who had NFL aspirations. So he's got very well liked in the personnel community, high ranking, 4-star transfer. He comes in, 3 years of eligibility. Of course, Xavier Lucas will monitor his situation with Wisconsin. That should be coming to a head here soon, given that the NCAA is now open for business here on the 2nd. But Lucas is lawyered up, pushing to enter the portal. Miami be the favorite there. He can play corner or safety, 6'2", 200 plus, 10-500, complete stud. And there'll be more to come at both positions. Of course, Zechariah Poyser, the number 2 safety in the portal from Wildwood, Florida, has already committed to the Canes.
Gio asking, do you expect a DC decision before January 15th? I mean, that's 2 weeks away. I would say yes.
I would say yes, but here's the one thing I say. I have never, ever seen anything in this that has more misinformation than coordinator searches for whatever reason. Going back to like when Manny got hired by Rick, people are always asking about coordinator searches, and they're almost always wrong to the last minute. People with good info are always wrong. So I've learned to just kind of take a step back, keep my eyes peeled, see what makes sense. But ultimately, those are usually a surprise, and the timing is always kind of up in the air. The name we mentioned that makes a lot of sense is Pat Fitzgerald, but he's got a lawsuit against Northwestern that needs to get resolved, and he's never called defense. So 2 big question marks there, but the guy's a stud head coach and is close to Mario. They share the same age, and he's been at practice.
And the Clint Hurt thing makes sense, too. I mean, I said it the other day, but I can tell you for a fact he was in the mix when Kevin Steele got the job the first time around. When Mario was making his DC hire. So he was in the mix then. I talked to some people in the NFL who question whether or not he'd go back to the college level right now when he was just calling plays for the Seahawks for a couple years ago and is now coaching one of the best units in the league, working with Jalen Carter and the Eagles. So I think that's a question. But I'm sure coming back to Miami and him and Mario know each other well. So I'm not going to say it's not a possibility, but it'll have to be a pretty good offer there.
Yeah, and by the way, some reporting now on Jalen Milroe from On3. They're basically saying that they're expecting him to go pro. They're expecting him to go pro unless he gets an unforeseen lucrative NIL offer. Again, if I'm Miami and I don't have my quarterback situation situated, which we'll see. I think he's the kind of guy that's worth it. just because of you're playing Notre Dame first game. They're going to come in with a very potent running game. You can match them hit for hit if Jalen Milroe is your quarterback. You might have the best running game in the country next year.
Williams Bacon asking if Guidry's firing could lead to transfer outs. When I said that about Thomas, I mean, it was more because that was the D coordinator that recruited him to his scheme, and he hadn't played this year. So if you're Thomas, I guess, look, you say, let me just get a fresh start now. But, I mean, I'm sure there could be a couple more. I don't know if it'll be I don't know if it's because of Guidry leaving. Obviously, the defense wasn't very good this year. So I don't see why that would be the reason why he left. But again, in Thomas's case, it's a little bit different when he didn't play all year, and that was the guy who brought him in here.
Yeah. Again,
to play a certain role in the scheme, which now you don't know what the scheme's going to be. So
question here is, you guys don't see a lot of downside to Milroe when it comes to air raid. I think you better adjust to your players, man. It's 2025. You look at a guy like, Lincoln Riley. I take shots at him on here all the time, but he had Baker Mayfield, who was a passer. Then you had Kyler Murray, who's a passer, but also could really run. And then you had Jalen Hurts, who at that time was a runner first before a passer. And he made it work with all those guys and had tremendous success. Of course, had great offensive lines there, which he doesn't have at USC right now, but Miami has. So that to me is the best way to be. Just take talent and accentuate their strengths. We have a different kind of running game than Shannon Dawson is used to. Alex Mirabal is very involved in the running game. So, it's a team effort. And I think you get two offensive line guys really high up in the program, your head coach and your best position coach. They're offensive line guys. I'm sure they'd love to run the ball with a running quarterback. I'm sure that's part of their thinking. But again, I've not heard anything linking Miami to Milroe. And On3 just reported that even though he'd consider college options, he's really looking more at the NFL right now. Which, look, coming off this year, I think it'd be smart to return to college. But these things are fluid.
We have 1,600 live with us. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And then check out canesinsight.com. A lot of you guys see us here on Twitter and on YouTube on the live streams, which we do pretty much every day, Monday through Friday. But we also have the website, canesinsight.com, completely free to sign up. 7 million posts and counting. You can join the discussion there.
Yeah, I'm getting my buddy No Problem too says he doesn't understand never understood the Lincoln hate. Was he getting paid $12 million to finish 7-6 and 8-5? That's a lot of money. I know Cristobal for $8 million and 10 wins is getting some criticism, but Lincoln Riley, without the great offensive lines, the offensive genius isn't translating quite as much, which to me, the lesson is, look, there's very good offensive minds in college and in the pros, but you better have that offensive line right. Unless you have Pat Mahomes to cover up mistakes, you better have that offensive line right. Look at Detroit in the pros, look at Philadelphia in the pros, and look at the teams that are having success at the college level. That O-line and the bodies up there and the cohesion up there is absolutely critical to be a top offense, which Miami was this year as the number one offense in the entire nation.
Booker's Rebirth says Lincoln Riley is a good coach. He retooled his roster and team was competitive all season long. Next season, they'll dominate.
We'll see. He had the Heisman Trophy winner, number one pick of the draft, and went 8-5 a couple years ago. Then this year, 7-6. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. One of his quarterbacks already transferred out. So, we'll see how it goes. I do like Houston Longstreet, the young quarterback that they brought in, but they better improve their offensive line or else it's not going to matter.
So,
Pete, by the way, what's up with I know you saw the basketball game real quick. What's I
sent you the tweet. Yeah. Let's talk about that. Let me pull that tweet up that had the odds on next coach.
So another tough loss, by the way. Pete's pulling up for basketball yesterday to Boston College. They were winning the game, playing inspired ball in the first half, and then just kind of fizzled away. Couldn't get a bucket. Pete did his post game on Canes Insight. Like and subscribe, by the way, if you have not done so already to this show. We got about almost 1,700 on here right now. But another disappointing game for the Canes, and there's some odds release on Miami's next coach. So
so I'm not gonna I can't pull it up on the screen right now, but I'll read it out. The odds for the next Canes coach, which real quick, the game yesterday, they blew a 19-point lead. It's a lot of what we've seen all season. There's not much for me to dissect or break down. They shot 56% from the field in the first half, and then they finished the game shooting 39%. So they shot like 20-something% in the second half. Anyways, the odds for the next head coach, the favorites are Sean Miller at plus 300 at Xavier, Will Wade at McNeese State at plus 400, Anthony Grant at plus 500, Richard Pitino plus 700, Ben McCollum at Drake at plus 800, then Bill Courtney, the interim head coach, at plus 1,000. So a lot of the names that we've heard early on that have been thrown out there by fans and stuff, but the Vegas odds are always an interesting thing to me because Vegas usually, it's either they may be hearing something, but they have a good pulse on like what the job is viewed at in the market, right? So Sean Miller at Xavier has coached at Arizona before, went to multiple Elite Eights over there, pretty solid track record. Not going to be a cheap hire. He's a big name, and Xavier's not a bad job whatsoever there in the A-10. Will Wade had his issues at LSU. Was one of the hottest names in the country at that time. He's back at McNeese State, winning a lot over there, and it's a new era, the NIL era. So I don't know if that stuff is necessarily looked at in the worst light anymore. Anthony Grant, local guy, he's been a big name that we've heard recently. He's at Dayton. Richard Pitino is an interesting one. Didn't work out at Minnesota. I was kind of talking myself into that one the other day because he could recruit well. Here, he's won everywhere else pretty much except Minnesota, which that was his biggest job. Not a great look there, but some interesting names thrown out there early.
Yeah, Will Wade is someone you mentioned, Pete, on our first show when the news broke. So that's the one that it kind of jumps out to me from that list. But it's gonna be an interesting thing to watch. That coaching search, obviously, I'm not sure Courtney is going to be there past this year, doing the best he can, but it's going to be a rough.
And look, the team
season.
came out with a lot of energy, I will say, in that first half. Yesterday, I think just unfortunately as the game wore on, a lot of the issues that we've seen with them defensively, and then just like not when the shots aren't falling, just there's not one guy you can just go to and say, go get us a bucket, right? However, you can go get it the way that you could with Isaiah Wong, with Jordan Miller in different ways, both of those guys. So the way the roster has been constructed has not worked. And unfortunately, you're going to keep playing some better teams here. Boston College was 0-2 in the ACC before yesterday.
And my only hope with this season is that there's some players that you are going to keep. Should be probably from that freshman group that is getting playing time, and that those guys play well and decide to stay, right? So other than that, it's just kind of going through the motions, sadly. I hate to say that, but, that's kind of where we're at here. Question for Zach Lesnar on football. What happened to the linebacker from UTSA? Talking about Martavius French, who was a 4-star linebacker out of Memphis, Tennessee, goes to Tennessee, gets kicked out, goes to JUCO, goes to UTSA. Pretty good player, man. I watched him against Texas this year. He was good. He definitely could play here. I think the question with him, more off the field stuff. He was suspended at Tennessee, had a Title IX investigation here, or a misconduct investigation at UTSA beginning of the year, ended up getting cleared. But his visit, there was interest initially. His visit was canceled. There was some communication issues. French's agent, appreciate that, Ant. His agent is Austin Feniger, friend of our show, somebody who was an agent or is an agent currently with a former Canes wide receiver as a walk-on. We've had him on the show a ton going back years. So he was vocal on social media because he was upset about the miscommunication, canceling visits. What I'm told is, Austin was able to communicate with Miami and they got on the same page and everything's good. But ultimately, Miami is not pursuing Martavius French. You read between the lines, multiple suspensions. My guess is that the character stuff just didn't come back the way Miami wanted it, and they decided to move in a different direction. But they're showing that they're interested in adding a linebacker, which to me, when you watch Ohio State yesterday and you see what their linebacker play looked like with Laurinaitis and what he's doing there, I think you see an area where Miami, look, there's so much talk about the DBs lacking talent, and they did, and communication issues, which they had. A lot of talk about the defensive line underperforming, which it did. We should talk about linebackers. I just think We've recruited some talented guys there, guys that can run, but it's just right now, and you got to develop some of those guys. You can't just rebuild the whole room, but that kind of tone setting, tip of the spear, Shaq Quarterman type, I don't see that on the roster, and that is something that I think we need. Look, obviously, I would love to have a Dan Morgan, Jonathan Vilma type, but even a Shaq type, a 4th-round pick, special teams player in the pros, really good college player, would hugely improve this defense. I think that's something that we need, that tone setter who knows how to play linebacker, has a feel for the game, can go sideline to sideline, and can make tackles consistently and plays with energy.
TGF Juice says, do you guys think we keep our DB coach? I think the coordinator that comes in is going to overhaul the entire operation there on that side of the ball. Does that mean every coach is gone? I don't know. But remember who brought Chevis Jackson in. So I just think that there might be, I think there might be some movement all across the board there on the defense side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, Chevis Jackson, like Pete mentioned, brought in by Landscape Tree. They coached together in Marshall. The secondary was the worst part of this team, the biggest factor in this team not making the college football playoffs. So, we'll see. But if you're taking odds, that's a position that you can't feel too good about your security with Landscape Tree being let go in the performance of the team on the field.
So, let's see. Yeah, Jackson says he thinks the whole defensive staff needs to go. I mean, look, like I said, I think whoever comes in will make a lot of moves there. So,
I understand. Yola is saying, so Popo's not that. I mean, Popo's a good player, but I haven't seen that tip of the spear, leader of the defense kind of performance from anybody. And I will say this about linebacker. You guys have been watching college football a long time. Some of you guys are older than others. I'm old enough that I remember when Ray Lewis had his first game. I was a kid at that time, but I remember because my dad was talking about it. And then as you get older, you go back and watch the game against Colorado. He came in and had like almost 20 tackles, right? Dan Morgan as a true freshman was making a ton of tackles. Jonathan Vilma as a true freshman was knocking people out in limited time behind Morgan. Perryman as a true freshman, Spence as a true freshman, they were balling. Shaq Cord as a true freshman was basically as good as he was as a senior. So linebackers position, usually those true freshmen, the really, really good ones, are good early. And I don't see anybody at that level right now. I think Pruitt's going to be a really good player. He can run, he can hit. He's a unique kind of guy as that safety / linebacker, kind of that San Francisco 49er style profile. I think he's going to be good, but I haven't seen anybody really just wow us making tackles all over the field. Maybe they develop into that, but you tell me in the comments if I'm wrong, if you've seen that. I think we need a guy like that.
Almost 2,000 on live with us. Thank you guys for being on. Like and subscribe to the channel.
By the way, Lou Screw is saying one of the reasons the defensive line underachieved is the twist and the stunts and everybody in the defensive line regressing. I agree. And I've talked to people at the NFL level who said that we did it too much. And I think we did. Too many games, too much movement around. We had enough talent on the front that we should have been able to just beat ACC tackles and guards and centers just head up. And I think we did do too much of that flying around, too many games, too many stunts, and it hurt our performance. I think one thing you'll see, I don't know because I don't know the defensive coordinators, but one thing I would not be surprised to see is Miami doing less of that. Because I don't think, anybody was happy with the results on the defensive line. And that complaint that you just had, Loose Screws, is a very common complaint from people that know what's going on, there was just too much of that going.
Going through Twitter here, seeing if anything news happening, D.
Kyle's saying latest on Messidor. Latest I heard was that he was coming back. I don't think his NFL grade's that high. He's someone that Miami would love to keep.
And look at the timing. All the other guys who are gone have announced their decisions too.
Right. I think Messidor might not be getting the invites he wants to All-Star games, right? So that's going to affect his decision. I think he'd be a huge add. Playing more at defensive end, because defensive tackle, you can have, David Blay from Louisiana Tech, big time transfer. You beat Penn State for him. He's going to play a lot, probably start. Anthony Moten really coming on strong there this season. Having, I won't say a breakout year, but certainly showing a lot of flashes and looking like a guy you want to play. And then Justin Scott, the 5-star true freshman, he's going to play a ton. So those three are going to play a lot at D tackle. Of course, there's always injuries. You're relying on Josh Horton to be your fourth guy who's injured. Maybe Messidor can play an emergency role at D tackle, but I think you train him up as an edge where he's most comfortable. By the way, Ruben Bain, seeing him in person at that Pop-Tarts Bowl, he looks huge, man. And he's someone that works hard. So if he's that big, his body might be telling him defensive tackles in the future, at least part-time for now. So that's something to watch as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what his future at the next level is.
So, a guy like Messidor can give you depth at D-tackle, but I don't think he has to play D-tackle as much as he played this year. I think he's a guy that you put at edge, and now your edge is much more solid with the big guys, the guys you want against Notre Dame to make sure they don't run on you. And then the skinnier, faster guys are able to, the Malik Bryants, the Booker Pickett's of the world. Those guys can play more in a rushing role because you have Messidor to be that base end and give you that physicality.
Is Inez Cooper coming back? Zach Lesnar asked. I'd be shocked if he heads to the next level. I think he has a lot more development that he could do.
Yep. I believe Blunt's going to be a stud. I do too. And only 17 this year, got playing time, did some really nice things in practice. He's someone to watch in the offseason. Didn't really have an offseason like others because he had shoulder injuries pretty much since spring. So he's someone that can make a huge leap this offseason. I do think end for him right now based on where his body is.
Eldridge Primus, as Josh Horton mentioned all the time, but doesn't do anything. He was hurt for most of the year, from what I know.
And it's a fair, criticism. I mean, the guy's been hurt. So,
but there's also not guys that are that size that you could just pick up off the street.
And he's athletic, and he's shown flashes when he's played in practice and even in garbage time. So he's someone that Miami, when I say, believe in him, obviously they see the same inconsistency as you as far as availability, but he's someone that Miami, if he's healthy, Miami wants to have on the field.
Yeah, I don't think it's someone that they're relying on right now. Like, man, we're penciling him in as one of the top 3 to 4 guys in that rotation next year. But if he's not a troublemaker, right? If he's not an issue in the locker room or anything like that, keep him around and hope he gets healthy and that light really goes off for him, because again, there's a limited amount of these guys out there.
Yep. 100%. I think our defensive line is pretty, if Messidor comes back, you never know what happens, but I think they're going to go a different route than just the mercenaries that were brought in last year. They're going to develop some of their young talent that they've signed, keep some of those guys. They're not cheap to keep either. But you got to, if you're keeping them and you're paying for them, you should put them on the field. I think if you're looking at defensive line with Blay, I think it's pretty close to solid. We'll see what happens, assuming Messidor comes back and no injuries in spring, which that's hard to assume. But, I think generally you're there. Secondary, if you add an Xavier Lucas, which has to get resolved through what's happening with Wisconsin, but I think that will get resolved ultimately, and he will end up being a Kane if I had to predict. Add him, that's a big-time player that is not going to lead the field. You're still in the mix for Ethan O'Connor from Washington State. You're battling Georgia for his signature. That's another young corner from the old Pac-10 with multiple years of eligibility. Ball hawk, 4 interceptions as a redshirt freshman. So he's another name you bring in. And then safety, the other safety spot, you have Zaquan Patterson. Dylan Day played a lot in the bowl, was great on special teams all year. There's different guys that are in the mix there to give you some more safety depth, along with Poyser. Damari Brown could end up playing safety. Lucas could end up playing safety. There's a lot of things you could do there at that position. You could also still bring in somebody else, but then a linebacker to me becomes the biggest need to add just a playmaking, difference-making player. If one doesn't come available, I think you roll with what you have. But if a guy that's a true difference maker comes aboard, I think that's a position that we should be going after.
People asking about Artavius Jones. I think he had a little bit more development to do than a Justin Scott this year. Really strong, talented athlete at that position, but that's a grown man position, not just physically, but mentally. And I think we'll really see him more this spring. But based on what I know, I think he had a little bit more development to do than a Justin Scott.
Yep, I think you'd put him in the same categories like a Tommy Kinsler, where like physically exactly as advertised and wants to do well, but it's just is behind a little bit and needs to just grow. And when it all comes together, you can be talking about an impact type player, both him and Kinsler, but they're a little younger in the game as far as where they came in development wise. But they're guys in Miami certainly wants to keep developing because the talent is absolutely there physically and athletically.
Rod Vick asking us, do we have any insight on what the scouting process is like in terms of how they evaluate and verify speed? I know they usually use a lot of the verified times that are from the camps in terms of those, which pretty much every school can get access to. But
yeah, so exactly. So the around, I mean, it's January. So here in a month, the camp circuit starts, and you have Under Armour camps in, Miami, Orlando, Nashville, all the different cities where players are nearby. And that'll run through the beginning of the spring and then the beginning of the summer. At those camps, you basically go through a gauntlet of combine drills, short shuttle, 40, vertical leap, change of direction stuff for the as far as 3 cones for the bigger players, the defensive linemen, different physical measurements, hand size, length, etc. Those measurements are kept by a company called the UC Report, who shares it with the teams. Teams pay for it, but they all do, and they have verified measurements that way. Some people scratch their times because maybe they had a bad time and they don't want teams to see it. So that's another kind of complication. But you get a pretty good sense of verified measurements there. Then, of course, most teams have access. Everybody can access track times because you just look it up. But most teams have a system to accumulate track numbers, throwing events, jumping events, running events, and that's part of the database too. Some teams place more of an emphasis on verified measurables than others. Teams that jump out, Penn State with James Franklin, who to me, I still say is one of the most underrated coaches in the world. I think he's elite. And, we'll see what he does here in the Final Four. But he's one that puts a lot of emphasis on these measurables. Matt Rule, formerly at Baylor, formerly at Temple, now at Nebraska. He's another one that puts a lot of focus on that stuff. I tend to lean towards that side. I think these are hugely important numbers. And I think, Miami should be strict in getting guys that meet these criteria. There's always going to be exceptions. Guys are growing, bodies are different, but verified numbers are usually going to steer you in the right direction. There's a reason why when you turn on the NFL draft here in a couple months, you're always going to see a lot of Penn State players. When you turn on the combine, you're going to see a ton of Penn State players. They start at the beginning. Rod Vick said they don't seem to realize that all of our bad players are slow players. I can't think of many fast players who failed here. There's always going to be some. Mark Pope jumps to mind. He was a verified 10-6 guy, but I think you're right, especially in the defensive backfield. Guys that can run are going to have more success. I think a classic example would be Xavier Lucas. Xavier Lucas was a 10-5 100-meter guy, 200 pounds, 6'2". We got on him a little late. He goes to Wisconsin and is a star as a freshman. And now we're trying to bring it back at a much higher number. So that's one example. D'Angelo Pond, someone I highlighted when he was committed to before he was committed to James Madison. I said, this is a guy to keep an eye on. Ends up committing to James Madison because he was only 160 pounds, but he was about 5'11", 6 foot, and he was a 10-5 100 guy himself. And he was very smooth and athletic on the field. So, speed's going to point you in the right direction more often than not. And I think the teams that place an emphasis on it, you could see in the combine, Penn State being number one on that list.
Mohammed Hussein says Jeff Thomas was a fast player who wasn't very good. I don't think it was because of his talent, though. That was other stuff.
Yeah. But look, a guy like Mike Harley, he ran a pretty good 100-meter. I want to say he was like a 10-9 guy before he got his offer from Miami, and he ended up outperforming Jeff Thomas and being a really good college receiver. I mean, solid college receiver. So those track times usually translate.
How about this one, D? As Keta Lento says, Miami wide receiver Robbie Washington will be visiting FIU tomorrow. I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but that he wants to play receiver, and he'd be a top weapon over there. Keon Jenkins is coming back for them. Yeah,
I think it'd be a good move for him, right? They just had the kid Daniels, who signed with Georgia Tech, who was one of the top 5 receivers in the country statistically. He can jump right in.
If he wants Daniels, what was his name?
Rivers. Sorry, Eric
Yep.
Rivers. So, if he wants to play wide receiver, which he does clearly, I think that's a good fit. Now, my personal opinion, he should be playing corner for a Power 4 team, Miami or whoever, and developing that way. But, sometimes these kids know what position they should play. Marshall Faulk, everybody thought he was a corner. He goes to San Diego State, and he's a Hall of Fame running back. Clint Portis, Florida thought he was a safety. He goes to Miami. He's a star running back for us. Jim Kelly, they thought he was a linebacker at Penn State, where he's from. He goes to Miami, Hall of Fame quarterback. So we don't have all the answers here. I think he's probably a corner at the Power 4 level, but maybe he wants to go to a smaller level and prove that he could be a standout receiver. FIU makes a lot of sense for that. And like you mentioned, Keon Lights Out Jenkins, really good wide receiver. And Willie Simmons doing some nice things at FIU. I think of all their hires, this is the one that makes the most sense to do what FIU needs to get done.
I like the staff they've built over there. A lot of Miami ties. Frank Ponce, OC and QB coach, Benedict Hippolyte, who was obviously on Miami staff, the receivers coach, and I know he's thought of very, very highly in the community. Ed Pata at O-line, which I know you and I both think he's going to do great over there. So, want to see those guys do well.
Yeah, I'm excited to see if I think it'd be a good fit. I think for Robbie as a receiver, he's very talented, man. He's very fast. He has the physical
And
stuff.
he's a pesky. He's tough. He's not. I think there was a lot of like diva stuff surrounding him early in his high school career. I think he's matured a lot. And I think the move for him to make the position switch in the middle of the season showed how much he matured. Like, yes, he wanted to play receiver, but he was willing to do what could help the team this year and obviously get him on the field. So I respect him for that.
Yeah, tough guy. The physicality is not going to be a problem either on offense or on defense. So, excited to see what happens with him. Obviously, Miami's got to sort out their own receiver room. That Noah Thomas news was very, very interesting to me. That would be, and then you got Zachariah Branch. So clearly, Miami's trying to add another receiver. But no matter what Miami does, obviously, got to get a quarterback situated. I think JoJo Trader has shown that you got to build around him as well and make sure whoever comes in, there's enough targets allocated for him. But look, you lose 4. CJ Daniels replaces Horton. Let's say that Nye Carr replaces Sam Brown. Let's say JoJo Trader replaces Jacoby George. You still got one spot left to fill. So could that be
the biggest shoes of them all in terms of production?
Yep. So we'll see where that one goes. And it can be done different ways, right? You could bring in a slot receiver like Zachariah Branch, who's on campus right now. You could bring in Noah Thomas, and maybe Nye Carr plays more in the slot, or Trader plays more in the slot, or Ray Joseph, gets the spot. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, but I agree with getting one more receiver that's dynamic.
Coming up on an hour here, D. We've had a great turnout on the show today. We got over 2,000 live with us. Appreciate the support, everyone. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out CanesInsight.com as always.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're looking for gear, you want to wear a sweater, don't catch a cold like me. I was in the slightly colder weather up in Central Florida, North Central Florida, and I didn't dress the part. I did have my sweater from the Miami Hurricane Team store, but I didn't wear it enough. But all the winter stuff, you can get at MiamiHTS.com, Miami Hurricane Team store right across the street from the University of Miami next to the Thesis Hotel. Doesn't matter where you are, you can get access to the official team store. This is the official store. All the money goes to the University of Miami because it is their official retail provider. Use promo code INSIGHT20, get 20% off your first item. If you're at the store, just say Canes Insight. They got a button for us. Don't press it. Boom, you get 20% off right there. If you're online, INSIGHT20, and that is your promo code for 20% off. Hoodies, jackets, you name it. Arctic Freeze coming next week, D. Yeah, I've heard about that. So put your orders in now so you get there in time. MiamiHTS.com.
Brian Taylor says, I'd like to see Bobby Washington get some more time. Very athletic. He had a knee injury, just had surgery. I don't know how bad it was, but
yeah, he's out.
It was literally the day after he announced he was coming back, which is like awful luck, man. But
horrible. He's out. Yeah, he's out for the year. You hope he heals. That's a bummer.
Yeah, tough. All right, well, just wrapping things up here. We'll be back tomorrow with you guys as always, Monday through Friday. Maybe we'll have some more news on the Branch.
Oh, wait, hold on, one thing real quick, because I got this question a couple times about Chance Robinson. Why we never talk about him? He's been hurt. He was hurt at the bowl game. He was hurt during camp. So I haven't seen him play because he was hurt during camp and he wasn't here during spring. And I know he was hurt for the bowl game, which would have been an opportunity for him to play. You saw Shamar Kirk out there because he was hurt. So I just don't, that's an unknown on Chance Robinson. I've seen him walking around. The body type is there. I know he's very talented in the high school level. So that's a TBD on Chance Robinson.
Yeah, and people are asking who's out for the year. Bobby Washington, I mean, it was a bad knee injury. So he'll be out for a while.
Yep.
All right. Well, stay tuned. We'll be back tomorrow with you guys here on Canes Insight Live. Thank you guys for joining us today. Great turnout, and support's been awesome here in the beginning of the year. We'll keep you guys updated with everything happening in the portal and team on Canes Insight. We got this DC search going on now, so lots of cool stuff going on. Check out the message boards. You'll be up to date there without a doubt. Go Canes.
Go Canes.